Hey gang, Kevin here, Life22. Do you know what an austerity budget is? Probably not, right? Most people don't know what that is. Well, only in New York is a pretty unique town, in city, in that we have in our charter no contingency plan if a budget doesn't get passed, and that is it's a way of checks and balances. It's not a bad thing to not have it. In this situation, it's a way to keep certain people on their toes and keep power in balance, if you will. The austerity budget happens when you go beyond April 15th to pass a budget. The mayor presents this common council a budget on February 15th, and then they deliberate over it, and they've got roughly 2 months. By April 15th, they should have passed a budget, at which point you can send it up for public comment. There has to be a public hearing. There are many more council meetings involved as well. The budget's already, then the budget gets passed, and then it's published. And then before May 1st, the new budget is passed, at which point they start producing tax bills. The tax bills go out for May 1st. So you might get them around May 1st, you might get them slightly after, but you'll get your city tax bill around May 1st. Now, with that May 1st tax bill, all the different banks that are escrowing people's property taxes built into their mortgages will just kind of auto cut checks based on those numbers. So if they don't have those numbers, they don't cut checks. If you don't get your bill in, you're not going to pay your property taxes because you don't know what to pay. And so this is where it becomes a caveat. So the city's fiscal year starts June 1st. And what you need to know about that June 1st deadline is the city is expecting a large portion, like 50% of those taxes are usually arriving by that time. And then by the time you hit July 1st, you've usually got 3/4 of it. Now, it is only about 40% of the city's budget. The problem is that you're creating a budget based on all of your income sources, and it spreads out throughout the year. So you might get a ton of it right at the beginning of the year, and if you spend it all at the beginning of the year, you don't have it to cover payroll and things like that are consistent costs throughout the year. So one of the big issues is that they're going to start with the austerity budget. They essentially start furloughing employees. Essentially, it's a government shutdown. And in my time here in the city, I've never seen this happen. Now, maybe I was under the age of 18 when it happened. I'm not sure. I actually have to do the research and find out the last time this happened, if it's ever happened at all. We've discussed it when I was on the council. It never came to fruition. Sometimes you get sticking points in the budget and you're like, you know what, screw you. We're going to vote no on this budget. And it always ends up passing until now. And so now the Common Council has not passed a budget. They're discussing it tonight, probably exactly this time now that you're watching this video, or the time that I'm actually recording this video. They are discussing it. Now, if they don't pass a budget, we run the risk of going into austerity, right? So into an austerity budget, which is an economic term that means strict or stringent, something like that. Yeah, anyways. The austerity budget is what we would try to avoid, but it is a necessary tool to accomplish the end game, which is getting the budget where the council wants it. Sure, it's presented by the mayor, but it is the council's budget. So if the council wants changes, they can change it. The council can also pass the budget and then deplete any line item that they would like. The mayor can veto any action of the Common Council, and then the veto can be overruled by a majority of the council. So there's a lot of different things at play here. So if you're new to the game of local Olean politics and chess, you are going to have to kind of stay with me here because it's just a lot to throw at you. So the austerity budget means that only emergency services personnel, police, fire, some street crews, some of the DPW staff, probably a good portion of water and the sewer division. Those guys are going to end up having to work because we need running water, right? And for a good portion of it, those specific funds, the water and sewer fund, should remain unaffected by, as they are different budgets. Now, their budgets for the year are going to allow them to be able to be authorized to cut payrolls and stuff like that. You would use that for your water and sewer increases. But if you don't increase, you still have the same consistent numbers coming in every month. You just would miss a deadline on having said increase. So you should still be able to cover it. It would be more or less the general fund line items. So you have your water, you have your sewer, and you have your general fund. Your water and sewer come out of those bills that everybody gets every month. But the general fund is where your property taxes, your sales tax, it would be different other generating streams of income, ambulatory services that the fire department offers, tickets and fines, permits and fees, different services that go out to the city and come back in. Ice skating rink, you've got your skate rentals, you've got all these other things. Now, some of that stuff also goes to subsidize the payroll that goes into running a rink, but just to name a few examples, right? When you want to rent the pavilion at the park for your wedding or for a birthday party, whatever, that is also income generated by the city. It's about 40% of it is property taxes. And then about 40% of it is sales tax. 25 to 30% of it is property taxes. I might have those two numbers screwed up, so don't quote me on it. But you get the rough gist, right? So like either way, 30 to 40%, 25 to 30%, you're talking 55 to 70% of the budget is those two items. So if your sales tax projections are down, then you're going to have, a budgetary influx. You might go into a spending freeze over that. If you have if you don't increase taxes, you're going to have, or you don't get the taxes in, you're going to have those. If you have too much sales tax come in, you're going to have not a shortfall, but you are going to have, an excess influx, which will roll to the general fund at the end of the year with all unspent funds that have come in. So if they buy a new police cruiser before the end of the year, it does not roll to the general fund, which essentially is the savings account. So there's just a lot of different things to be thrown at you here. But the big thing to take away here tonight is if the council does not pass a budget, it won't be the end of the world. You'll still have your emergency services. You just won't notice street signs being replaced, potholes being filled as quickly, things like that. You're not going to, you may not have staff to collect your water bill payments, to collect these things in person. You're going to go down to a skeleton crew, and under contractual obligations, they're obligated to pay those employees for their time that's there. They just might not pay them right away. So what ends up happening is it's just like the federal government shutdown, where the federal government would, you're supposed to show up to the TSA. You don't get paid for your work there, but at the end, they reimburse you. But you have to come in if you're obligated to come in, and that's the caveat. So there's still contractual obligations. There's a lot of different things that are going to happen once they pass the budget. Obviously, there are going to be some weird shortfalls where things are not going to have happened. So just a lot to consider. Now, if you're on the council and you are put in a predicament like this, where you say, no, I am not voting on this budget because of this, and that, I think it is a very valid point to not compromise on your principles over something as being held at essentially, political gunpoint to, do somebody else's bidding, right? Because it is your budget. You own it as a council. So you need to make sure that it's yours and it's something that you can vote for. It doesn't mean that you can't make compromises. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to come out with the best thing possible for the community, but you're on a deadline. You're on a crunch, and we've already missed that deadline. And so we are running dangerously close into missing a lot of the other deadlines, like publication and getting these things passed before June 1st. And so they may not go into a furlough type situation in an austerity budget if there's enough funds in the account. So let's say that they don't pass the budget. They pass the budget middle of May. Now everything is a month behind, right? They passed the budget. Now they have to do all the hearings and the meetings and the public, the public hearings. And then they turn around and they hit your budget with, they hit your tax bills by, let's say, June 1st. Okay, so now everything's 1 month behind. Can the city continue to pay its payroll? Can the city continue to conduct business the way it normally would and still cover those without bouncing the check, right? Because you got to remember that a budget is one thing, but the bank account balance is a complete other. And it's not like the city is sitting on credit cards that they can borrow or a line of credit that they can pull out of to cover payroll. You can't really be stiffing people on their payrolls. Obviously, governments are a lot easier to deal with, or have a lot more leniency with things like that, because it doesn't happen that often. They really put the screws to businesses and small business owners when you come with those shortfalls. So just a lot to kind of, it's like drinking from a garden hose over here, guys. It's a lot to take in, and it's all going down in real time. So I know this isn't a live video. This is a recorded video to give you the quality and Kevin's handsomeness that you would always like to see. But also, I also want to make sure that it's crisp, it's clear, there's no clipping out. You have the full audio, and you can understand what I'm saying. And I know I talk fast. You can slow it down. If you don't think I'm talking fast enough, you can speed it up. There's plenty of things that you can do with a non-live video, but that said, there is a lot going on. It is an intense time here. And so, like, you can understand why the general public, constituents, concerned citizens, people that are employed by the city might have a lot of anxiety, because it's the anxiety is created by the fear of the unknown, right? If you don't know, if things are ambiguous and you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know if you're going to get your paycheck next week, you don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of craziness, a lot of changes are happening. People are getting their jobs cut. You can see why that would happen, or even the potential of their jobs being furloughed. That can cause a lot of anxiety and a lot of animosity. And so, but it's better if every single person educates themselves on how the system works, how the process works, and then we can work through it together. But know that it's not just the council, it's a budget that the mayor presents, and it is a process in which the council has to negotiate amongst themselves to get to a process and get to a final product that they are willing to accept and get behind and pass as a whole for the betterment of the city. And you don't want to compromise on your principles. The reason that you elected these individuals from each ward is because they stood on principles that you or a majority of people in your ward saw something in them and said, hey, this is somebody I want to make decisions for me. And so you've got to kind of put a little bit of faith in that process that they're making the best decisions for you because you elected them, or at least a majority of people in your area did. And now they are going to the table, working together with each other to come up with a budget based on what they're presented by the mayor. So throwing that out there to you guys, it is very intense. We'll keep you posted. I'm catching up on all the prior council meetings that I've neglected to review for you, and I'm going to start making my way through that so that you've got something to reference back to. And then we'll also be keeping you posted with future events and outcomes of all of this turmoil. So stay tuned, guys. Life22 signing out.